Hello and welcome to 175th. Hello and welcome to 175th episode of the Strive Defense Dialogue. Today, a very important aspect we are going to discuss. It is line of actual control between India and China. It's an enigma. First reference, if ever it comes only by when in 1959 a letter which the then chief prime minister of China, People's Republic of China, Chao Enlai, wrote to Prime Minister Nehru, and he said that this is wherever we are, actually we are holding, we should form it as a line of control. Obviously, it was rejected. So from 1959 to 1993, it referred only to that portion which was there in eastern Ladakh. Portion in Arunachal was referred only as McMahon line, but post 1993 accord, the entire line is referred now as line of actual control. Now, till the kind of it refers to a kind of a dispute between India and China about the border relations, which is a legacy of a very old legacy, 1842, that Tibetan and Sikh empire conflict which took place in 1942, and there had been number of thereafter. It was boundary versus border and all those things, undemarcated boundary. This remained, and there have been number of interpretations presented by the British India. The sum total of the whole thing is 1947. It came as a legacy between India and China, that time Republic of China, later which became People's Republic of China in 1949, that it remained undemarcated area. And it was a kind of a dotted line which was shown there. In 1954, on the instructions of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister, it was made a firm line, which was about which we will be talking today. Post that, 59, as I mentioned, that Chao Enlai mentioned this kind of a thing, that line of actual control should be discussed. And in between, we had 62 conflict. Then we had in 1963 when Shakshgam Valley across Karakoram was handed over by Pakistan to China to settle their dispute. 67 we had another in East. There's a conflict, and the number of say till 1976 the relationship was frozen. Post that, this 1988 first time, and the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, he visited China, and a series of parleys commenced. We had 1993 accord when we decide. Then we have 1996 accord, 2003, 2005, and the number of but issue the at the end of the day, despite all these agreements, despite 21 rounds of kind of a core commanders meetings, despite 31 WMCC meetings, despite joint working group meetings, despite special representative meetings, the issue is far from resolved. One of the most important question is that how this thing all started, what is the origin of all this, and whether is there scope further to it or something. We have a very distinguished scholar soldier with us today, Major General Gajinder Singh, PhD, who is a erudite scholar and someone who knows a thing or two about LAC. He has been starting with a company commander as a Ladakh scout company commander around the LAC in the central sector, having been the BM of an independent brigade along the LAC, having commanded his battalion along the LAC, having commanded a division. Say, imagine company commander to divisional commander all along LAC. Uh, Finally, Major General General Staff of a command which has got a long border with the on the LAC. I think we couldn't have found better person than this. So to start with I welcome General Gajendra Singh, and let me also share with my viewers a very interesting thing that Strive is a brainchild in which even General Gajendra Singh, in his capacity as the Major General Staff of Central Command, he contributed substantially, and we are extremely thankful to him for his vision, and which is slowly taking shape today. So now, General Gajendra, first we would like you to give a kind of uh, mm, uh, kind of a historical perspective and how things have shaped and what is the origin of the conflict and all those things. Over to General Gajendra.
Thank you, sir, for this nice introduction. In fact, you have covered many points which I would have covered during my talk. But thank you very much for giving such a beautiful background to the entire episode that we are going to have now. So, straightway coming to the point, the initial years of interaction between India and China, and that is from 1949 to 1960, has been the most crucial one. It has had a lasting impact on the trajectory of our relations. I also feel that the decisions taken at that point of time will have consequences for centuries to come between these two great countries. So, I also feel that many of us do not have a clear understanding as to how this entire sequence of events unfolded and how we got into this situation that today we have such a long and a disputed border. So, actually, many people are not aware that prior to 1947, India and China had very limited direct contact with each other. We were interacting with China either through Tibet or through Great Britain. It so happened that Indian independence and coming to power of Communist Party of China happened almost at the same time. We got independence in 1947 and they came to power in 1949. So the Indian leadership of that point of time was very idealistic in nature, and they also lacked the diplomatic experience and the experience of statecraft to deal with an adversary like China. Whereas the Chinese leadership, they were, I will not say that highly experienced, but they were fairly apt in diplomacy. They were very systematic and methodical and very practical, especially when it came to their interests in places like Xinjiang or, for that matter, Tibet, or for that matter, dealing with India and their neighbors. The Indian leadership, especially Prime Minister Nehru, visualized a greater role for and maybe a joint role for India and China in the post colonial world. But and therefore he wanted very good benign relations with China as soon as possible. Whereas the Chinese leadership did not show or share the same kind of enthusiasm. In fact, they felt that India is a capitalist country, and they displayed deep distrust for Pandit Nehru. And if you read a few books, you will find that the Chinese press many times used to make very derogatory remarks about our prime minister at that point of time. Anyway, on 30th December 1949, India recognized the communist China without any preconditions. We didn't even raise the issue of the border, and we also kind of accepted the one China policy. Shortly thereafter, in October 1950, China occupied Tibet. Uh, Everyone is well aware that the Chinese launched their offensive to occupy Tibet from east as well as from the west. But their main thrust came from west through Xinjiang and through the Indian territory of Aksai Chin. It is also an interesting fact to know that at that point of time, uh, supplies of China were also being transported through India and Sikkim. That was one of their supply routes. India did not provide any assistance to Tibet, that's a known fact. Dalai Lama had to flee to Yatung, and thereafter the Tibetan administration was kind of made to sign the famous 17-point agreement. This 17-point agreement, while it made Tibet as part of China, but it also provided political and religious and cultural autonomy to Tibet. As this was signed, if I recall correctly, on 23rd May 1951, then the Dalai Lama came back to Lhasa. Moment he came back, he said that this agreement was signed under duress. This occupation of Tibet by China was very sudden. So India also got worried. For the information of people who may not be aware, that India had inherited some special rights in Tibet because of the treaties that they had with the Britishers, and that we were maintaining our trading posts in Tibet. We had Lhasa as a mission where Indians directly interacted with the Tibetan administration, and we had our military escorts placed all over Tibet. So these were some kind of special rights that we had in Tibet. So we got a little worried as to what is going to happen to our rights in Tibet. So India wrote to China, and finally Zhou Enlai, just 4 days after signing the 17-point agreement, made two statements. We need to note these statements. He said that India need not worry about its rights in Tibet. They will be protected. He said so. Then he said there is no border dispute between India and China. This was conveyed to our ambassador, Mr. Panikkar, by no person less than Zhou Enlai himself on 27th May 51. This is in a record in the Indian official documents. However, after making this statement, within no time, they started harassing our trade agents, started posing problems for our military escorts. And so India again raised the alarm with China as to, you have just promised this thing, why are you doing this? So Zhou Enlai wrote another letter on 15th of June. I'm focusing on dates because it gives a very clear sequence of events as to how things were unfolding. So he wrote a letter in which he made some statements and he proposed a few things. The first thing that he made was that all treaties that were signed with the imperial powers, they are null and void. The second statement that he made, India should not expect any special treatment or any special rights in Tibet, which are endowed by these treaties. Third thing that he mentioned was that the Lhasa mission should be converted into a consulate general. He also said that India should reciprocate by allowing China to open a consulate general in Bombay. He did not raise the border issue at all, but by questioning the treaties, he put a question mark on the McMahon line. So this proposal cum statements he sent to the government of India. Normally, government should take time. Every letter that Zhou Enlai used to reply, he used to take 3, 4, 5, 6 months to reply to our letters. So we accepted these statements and proposals from Zhou Enlai within 3 days. Within 3 days, reply was sent that we are all right with that. So what it meant was, what it inferred was that Tibet is inalienable part of China. Although officially we had not yet accepted it. If I'm not wrong, India has made a very, um, uh, very kind of a small statement sometime in 2010 or 11 that Tibet is part of China. But we had kind of inferred it long back. So
2005, TAR was in exchange of Sikkim. We
yes,
had
that's right.
accepted that TAR is
Yes,
part
we
of.
absolutely correct. So at that point of time, only we accepted for the first time. But over a period of time, we had almost given up everything. So this was one of the things that we did. So, but China did not rest with this. This slowly started harassing the Indian military escort more, and they forced India to voluntarily withdraw the escort. And by end of 1953, the military escorts were withdrawn, and the Indian government was very anxious. They were not clear what is happening in Tibet, what will happen to India's relations with Tibet. So they again wrote to China, and they said that we need to have a treaty on Tibet. And as a result, we signed the Panchshil Treaty in 1954. This treaty was also supposed to be basically a treaty to discuss the trade relations between Tibet and India. However, this also turned out as an exercise to accept the fact that Tibet is part of China and India has no special rights in Tibet. So, during this discussions for this treaty too, the border issue never came up. This is very interesting. So many things have happened, but the border issue has not been raised by the two countries. Why didn't China raise the border issue? They didn't know that they have claims in Arunachal Pradesh and Ladakh and all these places. They knew, very well knew, but Chinese did not raise their claims because they were preparing their facts, figures, their data, and they were preparing militarily to exercise their claims if required. Why didn't India raise the issue of the border? India didn't raise under the false assumption that there is no border dispute. And India didn't raise this issue because Zhou Enlai had verbally assured our ambassador in 1951 that there is no dispute between India and China. So India didn't raise because of this. So now, if we look at 1954, what has happened? The We have given recognition to China. We have endorsed one China policy. We have given them a UN's permanent seat. We have given them Tibet on platter. We have given them our rights, inherited rights in Tibet, and yet we have not raised the border issue till now. We are still not sure whether we have a dispute with China. So this was the situation on in 1954 when Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai was at the peak and we had signed the Panchshil Treaty. So now that you see, China was going as per a plan. China was going as per a plan in the sense that they were wanting that first they should exercise control before offending India or before antagonizing India, they should have full control over Tibet. So that they ensured. Secondly, they wanted that India should give up all rights in Tibet voluntarily. And third thing they wanted was that India should accept their friendship with China without any preconditions, and it should be based on their requirements. It should be after the acceptance that Tibet is very much part of China. That is what actually Chinese were pushing all this while. So now, after the 54 treaty, having set the stage, they uh, started speaking about the border. It is only after 1954, first time after having signed the Panchshil Agreement, that in July 1954, they raised the issue of Barahuti in Uttarakhand, which they call Wuze. Incidentally, Barahuti is the oldest dispute, a border dispute between India and China. So after this, in 1957, there was a report that there's a road which has come up in Aksai Chin through the Indian territory. This was also reported by some Ladakhi Lama who reported this particular matter. But at this point of time, China made a statement that they will be making a road through Aksai Chin called the Xinjiang Tibet Road. In 1958, first time publicly, China actually accepted. China claimed Ladakh as its part of China. They always remained evasive about the boundary issue with India. But while they were being evasive, they were building capability and they were making deep inroads into Ladakh. This was very surprising, actually. And in 1959, there was a Tibetan revolt. Dalai Lama had to flee to India. And so China blamed India for this, and relations actually worsened a lot. Then this was also the time when actually the 1954 treaty was to be renewed, but none of the countries actually agreed to put forward a proposal to renew the 1954 treaty. So relations were really bad. Few border incidents had also happened. So at this point of time, China said that we should have a summit at the prime minister's level, and a meeting was organized between Chow Enlai and Pandit Nehru in Delhi. This was there for 4 to 5 days in April of 1960. This meeting was held. Unfortunately, the meeting was inconclusive. It had to be like that because China had their own point of view, and a very strong point of view. So after this meeting, Zhou Enlai, he called a press conference. In the press conference, he blamed India for the failure of talks. He also made a very interesting proposition. He suggested the famous barter. He said that China is prepared to forego its claims in the East, provided India accepts the status quo in the West. This was not accepted by Pandit Nehru for obvious reasons. And obvious reasons being that he felt that everything is part of India and there is no reason why India should be giving away their rights. A word about the LACs. You had mentioned about the LAC where you said that it was Zhou Enlai who first time spoke about the LAC. This you had correctly mentioned the November 59 letter of Zhou Enlai, in which he had mentioned that there should be demilitarization. Both the sides should come 20 kilometers behind the so-called McMahon line in the east and the line of actual control in the west. To which, again, Pandit Nehru, actually, this he was very right, he didn't agree to the LAC. He said that China should first withdraw back from wherever they came. He gave a counter proposal. He said that rather than having a LAC at the present positions, we should go back behind each other's claim lines. And he also was benign enough to say that Chinese civilian traffic would ply on Aksai Chin, whereas the Chinese forces should withdraw. Here, Chow Enlai didn't agree to this proposal. But he happened to make one statement which was very interesting. He stated that the 1956 map which Chinese had provided possibly is in line with the Chinese border claims in Ladakh. So he had mentioned this statement. And but Chinese were so wily that this statement he made in 1959 and 1960 they produced another map in which they added 2,000 square kilometers more. And when their foreign minister was asked this question, why are you changing your stance so frequently? He says both the maps are same. While the from the appearance itself you can make out that both the maps are not same, but he says both the maps are same. So this is how the entire thing happened. Anyway, after this summit at the level of Zhou Enlai and Pandit Nehru, where they disagreed for the barter, they decided to have official level talks. So there were 3 rounds of talks between the officials of the two countries. These talks were held from June to December 1960. They were inconclusive. Nothing, no decision came out. And incidentally, these happened to be the last serious talks on border that we have had ever. Thereafter, we have only spoken about a de-escalation of the line of actual control. We have not come to the real mudda or the real issue that is the border. So with this, I come to the 1962 war. After these talks, India realized that
Well,
China.
just a small interjection. China is quite wily, as you said very rightly. They also had two maps, one by the postal state, one by the Peking University, 1925 and 1933. In both the maps, they had shown Aksachin as part of India. That also is on record, which is
Absolutely,
interesting.
absolutely. Their postal map, which is available on the internet, it shows Oxygen as part of India.
Fine.
So they this the border talks that happened for these 3 rounds are very interesting to see the perspective of both the countries and their border claims. And actually, I have read a lot on this particular issue. The Ladakh border is in two parts, as we know. One is Ladakh Tibet border, other is Ladakh Xinjiang border. So, Ladakh Tibet border, there is just no question that China can actually claim. Historically, while I don't have time to actually discuss, maybe sometime we can have a session on the Ladakh Tibet border and why China cannot claim that. But they are wily, they can actually confuse you with the data and by changing their statements time and again. So coming back to 62 war, India came to the conclusion that China is not serious about talks. So first time, Pandit Nehru decided to develop infrastructure. Srinagar Leh Road through Jujira was constructed between 60 and 62. And during this period, 43 posts were deployed in the Ladakh. Ladakh area, mostly in that area which was being claimed by the Chinese. So there was occasional contests. There were a lot of friction between the two. There was one Galwan incident which happened in July 1962. India had created a small post there, which was actually stopping the supplies to the Chinese forces. So Chinese decided to surround this post in July 1962, and they came almost 15 yards in front of each other. This post, a small Indian outpost, was surrounded from all directions, and they had left a small passage for the Indians to withdraw. But Indian post didn't withdraw from there. So finally, the matter had to be settled at the diplomatic level. The Chinese withdrew from there. Chinese also came to this conclusion that show of force is not going to work against India. They will have to use force. When China came to this conclusion, so first thing that they did was they created conditions for launch of a so-called self-defense campaign. They wouldn't have wanted to launch an offensive that will go against their post-colonial image. What they did was they deployed a small post across the LAC towards Indian side, not LAC, sorry, across the McMahon line
Online.
near the tri-junction of India, Bhutan, and Tibet at a place called Dhola. And when they put this post there, this was with a specific aim. They could have done this in Ladakh, they could have done this in Himachal, but why did they do it in Arunachal? Because they wanted to, Nehru always used to say that Arunachal is not contested. So they wanted to make him see that even McMahon line is disputed. So they put this post next to Dhola. India had to evict it because it was our public stand that we can't allow Chinese post this side of the LSE. When India evicted this post, it gave reason to the Chinese to launch the self-defense campaign.
One small interjection again, very interesting. If you see, China keeps claiming that they don't recognize even McMahon line, but the same China has settled border with Myanmar based on that line.
Absolutely.
That's it. So this shows the insincerity of that nation.
But at the same time, these 10 years, we were very naive. We should have been more politically savvy. We should have understood their intentions, and we should have played up accordingly. So anyway, they launched this campaign on 19th of. Sir, are we okay with time? I hope I'm not too slow.
We should just finish it off so that one or two questions I have for you, and then we can go for users' questions.
Okay, sir. Then I will quickly finish it. After this, what happened was that India-China relations were put on a hold, and only in 1988, as you mentioned, that when Rajiv Gandhi visited China, that we started having good relations. Thereafter, we signed 5 treaties starting from 96 to 2013, and there was bonhomie, but there was also a little bit of distrust because we had problems because of Shakti tests. We had issues related to the nuclear suppliers group. We had issues related to support to Pakistan. But we also tried to exchange maps of the LAC. We did successfully exchange the middle sector map. We got stuck in the western sector because it is complicated. So that is how, but we managed good relations till 2017. But Doklam again spoiled the, I'll say, so-called party or picnic which was going on. And since 2017, followed by Galwan, we have had almost a freeze of relations. So I will not delve into the current status. Current status is known by everyone. What is being said is by both the sides that there is little improvement. There is little improvement in the current situation. What is happening is that there has been no major border incident for last 2-3 years. Also, out of the 5 disputed points, that is Depsang Plains in the north, Galwan Valley, Gogra Hot Springs, then Pangangso and Demchok, 3 have been resolved. That's what newspapers say. I don't have the inside information. And 2 places, that is Depsang Plains and Demchok, are resolved shortly. If that happens, then the status quo of pre-April 22 is achieved, and that is what is being demanded by India. If that happens, I think situation would have normalized fairly. I will say that. So with that, sir, I come to end of my part. And if there are any questions, I would be more than happy to.
One or two kind of queries I have. One is that for the first time in the history, uh, post Kailash range operations, uh, they agreed to settle down certain things and they withdrew. Uh, but Depsang has got its own issue and Demchok has its own issue. There's reasons uh, are well known for these kind of thing. The Demchok provides them certain kind of access, and Depsang provides certain kind of a shoulder to that CPEC and all those things. Do you realize that it is possible to resolve these two?
So I will not look at the tactical aspects of these two points. I feel, in my experience, there is no reason why we can't resolve these, because the stakes are much higher at the political and the strategic level. The kind of trade that we are having, $136 billion now, with $100 billion deficit, is a very very big incentive for two of us to
China.
actually come back, leave whatever 100, 200, 400, 500 meters. I think it is very much that can be very easily resolved if the top leadership wants it. And To top it up, sir, I'm very happy that the special representatives, that is NSA Doval and Foreign Minister Wang Yi, they met in St. Petersburg last month, which is a good sign. They have met after nearly 5 years, so it is a good sign. I hope they will resolve these issues.
And as I can see, probably at this point in time, China is having their own economic issues, and that's why the trade relations with India, where they have got $100 billion surplus, India is too important a trade partner, which they can ill afford to lose. Probably this is the occasion where, if we try to find a pragmatic solution to these two aspects, then maybe we can find some solution to it. So that is one thing which I feel. Uh, can you just also give a kind of your perspective in overall, say, geopolitical setting of South Asia and where how China-India relations can progress and what Chinese objectives would be in this case?
So we are planning to cover this entire
Okay,
gambit,
Acha.
the way forward,
Next.
in the next session. So if I will be
Okay, okay.
quite happy to answer this question, but I think we'll cover it in the next session. Um, uh, I'm sure there will be some tricky issues related to the LAC, which the issues that we have discussed in the past. There must be some, things that may be tickling and interesting for people to actually understand. So,
Definitely, there will be certain questions from. Uh, then I'll just go for I think individual questions. That will be much better. Uh,
okay.
First question is this: invisible soldiers. Jain sir, of the topic question. The now no, this is not.
Well, if you want, we can answer. So there's no problem.
Okay, but then this is way off. But anyway,
This is
you
way
may
off,
like.
definitely.
But you can definitely answer because Chinese involvement is started increasing in Northeast in any case. Yeah,
Uh,
you may.
so this is
You may
this is a very interesting question, not linked to this. The Indian government has taken a decision to fence the Indo-Myanmar border, and my take on this is, firstly, it is a very difficult border to fence, and also the Nagas, why they are opposing is because they have their brethren, they have people living on the other side. And earlier we had this free movement zone of 20 kilometers. People could move freely. And I recall I was posted in Nagaland for a very long time, from 85 to 88. And that time, people could just move across without any problems. Subsequently, when I was the GOC there, in 17, 18, that time, things have got little regulated, but movement was still allowed. I think fencing should not stop the movement. Only thing what will happen is that it will get regulated. So there is no reason for people to fear, whether it is in Manipur or in Nagaland. They should not fear this fence. They should welcome this, because what is going to happen is fence will provide security. It will ensure that illegal movements don't take place, anti-national elements don't move across, smuggling doesn't happen. No one is going to stop your brethren, your friends coming from the other side. Only this will get regulated a little. So these concerns of these people are ill-founded. I think they need to understand the thing, the bigger picture of it. Yes, sir.
There is a question by Akhlain Kumar Singh, Karnleke Singh. Chinese are known to respect power. During the 50s, we were under the overhang of our subservient and colonial past. Was this the reason for not being able to see through the Chinese game?
This is a very interesting question. I had tried to explain this as to why we made mistakes, why we took certain wrong decisions. While we were not really bound by our colonial past, our leadership was actually that way, quite evolved. But the problem was that they didn't have that kind of diplomatic and experience of statecraft. And also, Pandit Nehru, he was wanting to make China a friend as fast as possible. He was very keen, more than keen actually. Actually, China never asked for recognition. They were wanting recognition on their terms. India voluntarily actually gave recognition to them. And India fixed deadlines for itself that we must give them recognition before the Colombo conference, where it will be later on seen that we have given it, given it on the influence of other powers. He wanted to look independent, and so we did make mistakes, but I don't think it is because of the colonial hangover or because of the colonial mindset.
In fact, very interesting. There's a book recently I came across where he says that Nehruvian thought was that he was very cynical about West's interference. So he says we should try to make a Oriental, or say of a kind of a alliance where China and India together can take on West, and that is why he was bending more than backward. This, I think, the Basin's book, which mentions this portion, which gives a, maybe it is right or maybe it is not right, because now neither Nehru is there nor anyone else of his generation is there to give judge say kind of a rationale for his policy, but it definitely is the reason. Now this Manoj Singh, he says, "Ask sir, America is a superpower by keeping allies everywhere, but the Chinese are making enemy out of everyone. Do they really believe that they can be a superpower without friends?"
I don't think anyone can become a superpower without allies. So that is true. And I also don't agree that China is not having allies. They are investing a lot on making friends. While they may not be having friends in the so-called Western world, but Russia is a good ally of theirs, and they have many other people who stand for them. And definitely,
Middle East, they have invested. Middle East, Iran, all these they have invested quite substantially. North Korea, their number of friends. Yeah. Okay, we take the next question. Rakesh Bhatia. Do we know, research or answer what does China expect from us in return for resolving the boundary? Yeah, that's an interesting part.
Rakesh Bhatia is also asking the answer to a question which has to be dealt in the next session. But yes,
Okay.
I have done a little bit of research, and the answer for this is long, because it requires going into the mind of the Chinese. It is a longer discussion. What Chinese wants from this dispute with India may not necessarily be the boundary, may not necessarily be the territory. It may be something else. It may be moral or psychological victory that they may be wanting. So this question is something which goes beyond, I'll say, uh, beyond what we are actually thinking in terms of territory. Yeah.
Middle Kingdom throwback or something.
But this is
They,
definitely needs to
we
be.
will definitely next session we'll discuss this
Yes.
issue.
Next session we'll
Uh,
discuss.
Sharab Pachauri has asked a question: what prevents India to revisit your old friend? It's one China's policy. Are we under any obligation to adhere to this perennially?
So this is a very interesting question. We'll definitely like to take it on. You see, whenever India was supporting Tibet, it was not supporting Tibet fully. So while we have been hosting Dalai Lama with us, we have been doing many other things. But we have also been supporting one China policy. So China is also doubtful as to what we are doing. While we are also interacting with Taiwan, but we are also supporting one China policy. It is, if it is in our national interest, if we take a decision that we will not support one China policy, then no one can stop us from taking that decision. But I also feel that it should be clear. Either we should support one China policy properly so that Chinese don't keep suspecting us and don't keep blaming us, or on the other hand, we should not support one China policy at all. So we are somewhere in between, which is not a correct policy. We are actually sailing in two boats, which is not a good idea.
Probably it is. It could be deliberate because even if you look at US, they still haven't recognized Taiwan. They're providing all support, everything, but as far as they are concerned, they have also not jettisoned their policy, and so I think it's a this diplomatic ambiguity is probably a kind of deliberate attempt, which should be. I agree with you that it should be avoided. It should be avoided. Clear cut policy so that we are upfront that whether what relationship we want. I agree with you.
I
Uh,
want to ask you, before this question is taken up, why is India supporting Taiwan? What is it getting? This question need to be deliberated by us. If at all
yes,
we are trying to, what benefit are we getting? What benefits have we given to Tibet by whatever policy we are following? Have we been able to give autonomy to Tibetans? Have we helped them in any way? We have just antagonized actually China. So we
yes.
need to really be clear what we want to do. One way is the
And
correct way.
Gajendra, one thing which, if you recall, in 1948 or so, that time Tibet was still supposed to be an independent state, though they had not got the membership of UN. They told India to vacate Arunachal, if you recall. So that so there are I think it's a very very complex thing, and I agree with you that why we should be having what Tibet policy we had, and why we are having now what we are having. Same way how we are treating Taiwan, because antagonizing, or if you want to have a friendly relations, we want to have friendly relations. If we don't want to have friendly relations, we don't want to have friendly relations. We have to be very clear about it. Now next question we have to learn from China. Firstly, they are purely focused on strengthening their military and economy from the time they became a communist country. We didn't fully concentrate to achieve that. It's a more of a statement rather than
It's a statement. It's a fact.
it's a fact.
And
Chalo, we
and
go.
and and there are many examples to that. Actually, it's true.
Yes,
Absolutely true.
absolutely true. So Raman's Sandeep. Now next is uh, this is uh, Satishan Vittil. While India looked the issue of its border dispute with Pakistan to international stage, why didn't it do the same to Indo-China border dispute? This is
This is this is a very interesting question.
uh,
If we look at the, I need to actually think about it. But if you look at the dispute, it has evolved over a period of time, and it is till 54 there was no dispute. 50, but the dispute started in 57, 58, and yes, we maybe we could go to United Nations where China will veto it. I don't know what benefits will
now,
accrue
now
out
of
of.
course it is impossible. Now it is impossible. Probably in 50s, if we had done, probably it could have, because that time Republic of China was still member of the UNSC. So probably that time it could have been done. Not now. It is not possible.
But the
Yeah.
recall there was a conference in Colombo, in fact, to
Mm.
discuss the Indo-China war, and every time the dispute used to be raised, Zhou Enlai used to write to all the leaders of the non-aligned countries.
Online
So
country.
India-China dispute was actually fairly internationalized, although it was not in the domain of the United Nations.
Yes, that is there. And if you recall, in from that Colombo conference, only while coming, Nehru had given that famous statement that I have asked our army to throw them out, and that is how the which precipitated should be our future course of action. I think this is our second part. In any case, we will be discussing this.
If you ask me, I will the this question I'll just try and answer. And I feel that we need to have good relations with China. There is just no choice. Uh, but we have to have at our own terms. And own terms mean we need to have a settled border. Settled border means at this point of time, we cannot resolve the border question. As I mentioned during that talk, that this border question was last discussed in 1960. Now, there is, if you ask anyone, no one has any idea how this question will get resolved. But we can do one thing, we can have peace and tranquility on the line of actual control. We can keep the LAC peaceful. We can reduce the number of troops on the LAC. We can stop spending so much money. I'm not only talking about India, but India, China, both. On So we need to actually quieten the LAC. One of my proposals, personally, my proposal is that LAC should be converted into a LC as fast as possible. We should come to some kind of an agreement, exchange maps. Now we have a lot of technology at our disposal, and if we can first have peace at the LAC, we can convert it into a LC. I think a lot of things will get resolved over a period of time.
So if Deng Xiaoping, wherever he is, he would be very happy because this is what he wanted. He says, "Ki keep this for future generations. Let's have better relations." And I tend to agree with you that. But then first step is exchange maps and let LAC be demarcated. As on date, it is not demarcated. It is anyone's perception. Now we go to the next question. Eh, Raman Sandeep, country divided. It is evident that what is happening in India today, how to get, what is this? This is nothing to do with this. I think this question is meaningless. Jiten Chauhan is asking, sir,
Yes.
don't you
This
think the
is
USA is India against China?
This is a very interesting question, because China, right from 1950, has been saying this. They say that India, to use the exact words, that India is a capitalist country, and Pandit Nehru, they used to, they use very derogatory words against him, that he is a capitalist stooge and things like that. So this suspicion has always been there. And now India being part of the Quad actually further strengthens the Chinese belief, and they continue to suspect India. Now, whether in our friendship with US is going to yield results and is going to be productive is $1 million question, and is a subject by itself. But my personal opinion is that we should be careful when we are forming partnerships with the USA. We should be a little careful, because we have to fight our own wars at home. While we will get support, but we need to be careful. So we need not get used by any country while we are dealing with our neighbors in our neighborhood. We need to be careful. I leave it at that.
Actually, I got two interesting comment on this. One is, if you recall, in 50s, when after independence, we took this whatever Britishers had a viewpoint on Tibet or Indo-Tibet relations, Indo-China relations, and we were legate. So, in the minds of People's Republic of China, which is a communist China, that was a bourgeois thought, and they said imperial, and it was that century of humiliation. It's a throwback to that. So that is one of the reasons why they were against so much against India at that time. Today, India alone, if they want to challenge China in the overall strategic, it is because power differential, economic differential is so much that alone India cannot do it. So while uh, Indian US relations is transactional, but we got to create our own alliances to keep to be able to challenge China. So these are the two things we have to. But as China, America always says that interests are permanent, friends are not permanent. When Modi was last year in US, Blinken was in Beijing trying to woo China once again. So therefore, US has its own interest, and we must not be totally be putting all our eggs in the basket of US. I absolutely agree with you. Uh, Next question is, this is a cleansing. Fencing has its implication. The terrain northeast being what it is, will it be a drain on our uniform resources to cover it? I think you had already alluded to it. It's a difficult.
But I think fencing is the need of the day, need of the hour. Ultimately, the Indo-Myanmar border has to get fenced, and the movement has to get regulated. Keeping the concerns of the communities living across, I think fencing has to be done, and it will be a strain on our resources and budget. But then it is, you have to guard your territory. You can't just leave it open. It has to happen in the long run.
Uh, I think no, no. This question is not relevant. Today's discussion. What is your GDP estimate of China? Is it 18 trillion or far less than that? I think this is a
I'm not an
question.
economist, actually.
No, it is not today's discussion. It is something else. Uh, I think we have very fruitful discussion, and all it is left for me to say a big thank you to you, Gajendra, and probably it has aroused more curiosity about second part, that what should be the way ahead. Although you had given some thought to it, but I think we need to have earliest a discussion on way ahead of our Indo-Chinese relations, which should be independent of Indo-Pakistan relations, Indo-American relations, China, Pakistan relations, and China, US equations, and and but China will have to also think something like they will have to shed that Middle Kingdom throwback and a kind of a thought. Then only we can have a proper relationship. But yes, relationship, as you said very rightly. So we look forward to that discussion. All it is left for me to say a big thank you to you, General Gajendra. It is a wonderful interaction we had, and obviously it has raised the curiosity so of me and my audience that we would definitely look for another discussion. Maybe Monday or Tuesday we will do it. Hmm. And
Sure.
depending on your availability and our schedule. Uh, Before I close, a big thank you to audience for being so patient and participating in the discussion. Uh, all I'll request each one of you to please like, subscribe, and share the discussion, because we do look forward to it to message to spread. I think unlike many other channels, we are the only one who are absolutely professional, no fanfare, nothing, and we absolutely come to the point. Thanks a ton, and wish you all a very happy Dasera and happy Ram Navami. And thank you. Good night and Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, Jains.